So we're starting out today at one of the largest archaeological sites in all of Israel, that of Hazor, here in the northern part of Upper Galilee. This is a city that predates the Israeli conquest with Joshua. And in fact, Yael tells us that we could probably spot some of the scorch marks somewhere around here from when Joshua came and set fire to the place back in the 1200s BC. Now, when I speak of this as being the largest archaeological site, part of it can't actually be dug up because over here, the field beyond me is owned by an actual farmer. He's been instructed by the Department of Antiquities that he can only grow wheat or other low-growing plants so as to, one, not obscure the view, and two, so that it doesn't disturb whatever antiquities there are and there would be underneath his field. They at least haven't claimed that from him, but at the same time, it's entirely possible that he might unearth something inadvertently through the course of his fielding and planting. Now, behind us, the mountains of Naphtali, which received their name long after Hazor was leveled for the first time by Joshua. But beyond the mountains there are where Tyre and Sidon used to be, and way over here, although they can't be seen very well, are the mountains of the Golan Heights. We are at the some of the northernmost parts of Israel. Hazor was a trade crossroads, being between Tyre and Sidon here to the north, and of course the road to Egypt in the south, much like Megiddo was. As we come into the city that has been dug up, you can see all sorts of dwelling places on either side of this pathway. This was a large city, both in terms of size and population, being something of a trading hub even before the Israelites got here, and in fact perhaps more so for that matter, after having been leveled by Joshua and the Israelites. Just outside of the palace of Hazor, we have this construction here, partially restored, as you can see from some of the squared off blocks here, but also partially original. Now, what was this? Is it an altar? Even our guide doesn't know, and points out that archaeology isn't an exact science. Sometimes you're looking for something in particular, and you simply conclude that this fits the story that you're looking for. So, if it is an altar, or if you're expecting to find an altar, you can certainly describe it as such. What it really was, we don't know. There are, or seem to be, those scorch marks I told you about here. But again, there's also a combination of limestone and basalt. This could just be a basalt rock that is showing its true colors. And here within the audience chamber of the king of Hazor, we also have that line I spoke to you about where you have the original stones and then some non-original stones telling you not to mess with the original stones. Some of this has been built up, but as a general rule, this place has not been touched for thousands of years. And Junior just read us a line from Jeremiah that indicated that Hazor would be a ruin and a desolation forever, which at the time he wrote it seemed improbable because it had all the things you would need for an ancient city. But now, nobody is here, nobody uses it, despite all of its advantages. And it is in fact a ruin that goes back so far that even the Romans never did anything with it. Below us are the ruins of what has been verified to be a Canaanite temple, or at least what's left of it. This is the part that was destroyed again by Joshua and his army and never rebuilt thereafter. Which, to be fair, stands to reason. First of all, if the temple has been destroyed of a conquered people, why would you want to worship the God that couldn't defend his own people? Second of all, the Israelites' God basically said that you shouldn't have any gods before me. There's no point in me building a temple to a false god. Now, while an ancient city needs to be near water in order to thrive and grow, it also, in order to defend itself, it also needs to have the water within its city walls. Otherwise, an enemy could simply cut off the river or whatever is flowing into it and quickly cause the citizens to surrender. So down here is where a cistern has been built in order for Hazor to actually access its own water, whether it's being besieged or not. Now, to be fair, this metal cage is not the original staircase leading into the water system that Ahab built. That's what we have here. But behind me, they do have cut into the rock what I guess we would call rudimentary, but still very efficient for its time, a stairway into the cistern area. Forgive me if I'm not staring into the camera because it's quite an interesting climb here, and I don't dare not look down every so often. It does leave you wondering how they managed to have the nerve to get down here with such little. Here we go. You can see over here the stairs that led in. Well, down here at the depths of the well, there isn't any water to speak of. However, there are some buckets for which some people have been bringing up in order to dig our way out of here. And they have to come back up the same way they came down, which is going to be a bit of a challenge when I'm carrying the camera. It occurs to me that with all those buckets being brought up, who's bringing the empties back down at this point? Not that this is part of the archaeological site, but the staircase actually has a double helix to it, so people going in and coming out don't run into each other. I think I've got my steps in already.
Oh yeah, and you weren't carrying a bucket.
No, but I've got a camera, so. Meanwhile, as if to just emphasize how big Hazor is, or was, I guess more to the point, there is more of the city even beyond here. The palace, the audience room, that altar that I showed you is all over this way, and yet there's far more behind us. And this is to think that, you know, at a certain point, nobody continued to build here anymore. As an example of the lived experience here in Hazor, we have the public square here with pillars that would support a rather large arched roof. This is probably used as a storehouse or a warehouse. But behind us is a private dwelling. It's described in the guidebooks here as a 4-room house, which for that time would have been an impressive place, complete with an olive press. But if you think about it, how many rooms do each of us have in our homes? This is a princely dwelling for ancient times, but for your typical suburbanite, I'm not sure this would be all that impressive when you come down to it. Right out here we have an olive tree, which is next door to the house itself, which has itself an olive press. You squeeze the rock down onto that vat where you'd store the olives. Create olive oil for yourself. Proverbs talk about people being able to sit under the shade of their olive tree and vineyard as a sign of peace and prosperity. This was, as you might say, the Israelite dream as opposed to the American one, where you have your own crops, you're self-sufficient, and you don't have anything to worry about in terms of raiding parties or enemies approaching. Everybody has their own idea of what the good life looks like. That was that.